The very last words of Jesus is, "It is accomplished," which is signify that his mission is complete. They take down his dead, limp body and they put it into a tomb which was nearby, and a huge stone is rolled over it. For the disciples, it is over. And that dead body signifies their dead hearts. The tomb is also their hearts. They go behind locked doors. This is the tomb in which they're now lying. They have no hope, it's crushed. All that beautiful excitement which they had had, all that is finished. And so they enter into a world of despair. On the early Sunday morning, however, Mary of Magdala, that little town which was a Roman camp, she comes to the tomb. She sees that the stone has been taken away. Impossible, who could have done it? She peeks in, and the body of Jesus is not there. So in a hysterical way, she goes running to Peter and the other disciple, the beloved disciple, and they say, "The tomb is empty, somebody's taken away the body of the Lord." These two men, startled, go running towards the tomb. And it's said that the beloved disciple runs a bit quicker and gets there first, but he doesn't enter the tomb. He waits till Peter arrives. Peter enters the tomb. He sees the linen there, and the cloth that was over the face of Christ has been sort of folded up in a corner. And then the other disciple comes in, and he sees that too. And at that moment, it is said, he saw and he believed that Jesus had risen. He believed. But Peter is not there yet. John, the beloved disciple, had been at the cross. He's lighter. Peter is still heavy with guilt. Both of them are confused. And it says that both of them went back to where they were, leaving Mary alone, weeping. So she again looks into the tomb, and she sees two angels. And they say to her, "Why are you weeping?" And she doesn't seem to see the significance of this reality. And she says, "I'm looking for the body of my Lord. Somebody has taken it." She turns round and she sees a man standing there. And she goes rushing up to the man and said, if you have taken his body, tell me where it is so I can go and get it." And he just says, "Why are you weeping? What are you looking for? Who are you looking for?" And then it says she turns round again, and this stranger who she took for the gardener looks at her and says, "Mary." And immediately she recognizes the voice of Jesus. And Jesus says, "Don't cling to me. I'm going to my God and your God, my Father and your Father." Mary of Magdala will be transformed from the emptiness because the one she loved is no longer there. And she suddenly is filled with a presence, filled hearing that voice which says, "Mary," which is a voice of love, a call, similar to that incredible call which we hear from Isaiah. "Do not be afraid, for I have liberated you. I've called you by your name, and you are mine. You are precious to my eyes." So Mary is suddenly filled. Later, these men will be filled. From people of fear, they'll be transformed by a presence which then will send them out to forgive. All this scene is about emptiness to fullness. So I'm going to ask you something. It's about your emptiness. and your desire for fullness. You see, there's the empty tomb, then there's the heart of Mary of Magdala, her empty heart filled with anguish and her wailing and her tears. There's the empty hearts of the disciples, completely void, hiding away in fear and anguish. And later we'll see the empty heart of Thomas, sort of cut off from the others, alone in doubt. And what we'll see is transformation. This is a moment of transformation. And Thomas, the emptiness of Thomas, that doubting Thomas, the one who doubted, he then will be filled by a presence and a faith, so he will be able to announce faith. And this presence of Jesus with Mary, and then later with the disciples, no criticism, no judgment, just, I love you. And just to say I love you is a forgiving presence. What always touches me in the resurrection of Jesus, first of all, it begins with a meeting, a personal meeting with this woman. It is a woman who is the first one who has this relationship with Jesus. This woman who we heard in Luke had had 7 demons within her and who had been liberated by Jesus. This woman who was a fragile woman that the men rejected because she was slightly hysterical. And yet it is to her that Jesus reveals his first, I dare say, his first love. It's to her, and he just says, Mary. She rushes and clings onto him. He says, don't cling to me. You see, she mustn't cling to the past. She had a particular relationship with Jesus. Now Jesus is risen. Something new. She mustn't hold on to what she was before for Jesus. She must discover something new. She must discover this new indwelling. And that's why Jesus says, don't cling on to me. And he sends her to those men, and I would think that she's pretty angry with these men. These, what she would say, cowards. She was at the foot of the cross. She was there with Jesus. They were at a safe distance, not too near, not too far. Like many of us, we are in between. So inside of her, there's probably a lot of anger. But the first thing that Jesus says is, go and see them. That's what he's telling a lot of us. Go to those you don't like and say to them, brotherhood. It's the brothers of Jesus, and she is the sister of Jesus. And so Jesus is reforming a community that had broken up. That same evening, the disciples are behind locked doors because they're frightened. And Jesus appears amongst them. I find it very beautiful. The disciples were not looking for Jesus. He came and was in their midst. And what he said was just, peace to you. It's very beautiful. You see, he must have looked, I would think, at each one and said, peace. You see, peace, and we've already heard about that Jesus came to give his peace and leave them his peace. And what is the peace of Jesus? It's just his presence, that he's present to them. We spend a lot of our time worrying about what to do and how we should do it, and there's anguish and there's emptiness and so on. And we have a lot of difficulty trusting in the presence of God, trusting in the presence that God is there, that he loves me, and we just have to wait. We sometimes want to decide what we must be doing or what God is calling me to. Wait. Because it is Jesus, it is God who will take the initiative. His role is accomplished. He will go to the Father, and as we heard, he will send his Spirit. He will send the Paraclete. The Paraclete is the consoler, the one who loves us, the one who fills us so that we're no longer lonely and in anguish. The one who will give us a new spiritus, a desire for truth, a capacity to do what we cannot do ourselves. And so Jesus is saying, as I was sent by the Father, that's the mission, to take away sin, to take away all those barriers that prevent people being in communication with God, in communication amongst themselves, in communication with that deepest part of them. As Jesus came to take away the sin of the world, so he's going to send his disciples to be people who will take away that sin. So he is sending them. What is he saying there? He's saying, you will continue the mission that I have shown you and that I have lived. And in other words, you must become like me. That is, which is meaning to say that each one of you, you must dwell in Jesus and let Jesus dwell in you, so that you can go into a world where those places where there is an absence of God, to be a presence of God. To be in those places where there is hate, to bring love. To go to those places where there is violence, to bring peace. To go to those places where there's a refusal to forgive, to forgiveness. This is the mission, which is first of all a mission of their presence, to be present to this world, not to slip away from the world. The whole of the spirituality of Jesus, the whole of the mission of Jesus is not to bring people into a comfortable place of spirituality where they can live a beautiful peace. No, the peace is there so that they go forth to bring peace to the world. So Jesus says, as the Father sent me, I send you. And then he goes up to each one and he breathes upon them. And he says, receive the Holy Spirit, receive my Spirit, because they can't do anything without this new force, without Paracletus, without that extraordinary force that comes from the heart of God, this incredible force of love which will transform them, is transforming them, so that they can go out and give love. The whole of the mission of Jesus is to give life. And the Spirit of God is life. And what he desires, what Jesus wants, is that these men and women will go forth to bring life to the world, to bring life, to help people to become fully alive. And then Jesus says, go to forgive. Those sins that you forgive will be forgiven. Those sins that you retain will be retained. So here we have the mission of Jesus. The mission of the disciples is to go forth into the world as a visible sign of forgiveness, as a visible sign of breaking down the barriers which prevent people loving each other and knowing God. The 10 disciples are excited. Jesus has appeared, he came through the locked doors, they're hugging each other, you could just imagine the excitement. You can imagine the meal that Sunday, that Easter Sunday morning. I mean, never has there been such a meal of excitement and happiness, and Jesus is risen, he's really alive. Everything that he said is true, and he's going to be living in us, and it's fantastic. And one of them was not there, Thomas, the one they called the twin. And he arrives at night probably with a somber face, and they say, we've seen Jesus. He's alive, he's really alive. And he's furious. He can't believe them. There's something in him where there's a bit of stubbornness, but also something where he wants to see things for himself. He doesn't want to be gullible. But it's a little bit too much when there are 10 of them saying, at least 10 of them saying, we have seen him, and he can't, in some way he can't trust. There's something beautiful, but there's something a little painful. And if I don't put my hand in his side, if I don't put my finger in his hands, then I will not believe. Pretty strong words. You can see the tension that was there and is getting better between the disciples. A week later, Jesus appears again and he says, "Peace to you, peace." There again, he's saying to each one of you, "I love you, just as you are." He's saying that to Thomas, "I love you, even with all that is doubting in you." He's saying that to each one of us with all that is broken in us. That's the whole of the mystery of the risen Christ. He loves us as we are, and then is going to call us to transformation, to change. Then he comes over to Thomas and he says, "You see my side? Put your hand in my side. You see my fingers? See my hand, put your fingers there." You can sort of see Thomas sort of almost, yes, probably weeping, just saying, "My Lord and my God, it's true, it's really true." And Jesus just looks at him and says, "Do not doubt." And then he gives a benediction, a special beatitude. "Blessed are they who believe, even if they haven't seen." So it's this last, or this apparition, it's for you, it's for me. You see, there was the apparition, that unique apparition to one person, to Mary, that unique personal relationship. Then there's the apparition to the community, at least minus Thomas, where Jesus just looks at each one and says, "Peace," and then sends them forth. And then there's what I'd call the call for you and for me. That's to say, we who have not seen, but we have believed this message, which has come from generation to generation. People who say the disciples saw and they witnessed to the resurrection. And so this has come from generation to generation. And then we can have an experience of Jesus because we have believed in the words of Jesus. We've received the Holy Spirit at baptism. We've received the Holy Spirit in a particular moment, and we have begun to believe, so Jesus is living within us. There's a whole mystery in the wounds of Jesus. I mean, one could have imagined, one would have thought, that the risen body of Jesus would be what I'd call complete. But there's that gaping hole in his side, there are those wounds in his hand and in his feet. What is he saying through this? He's saying that my body, through all eternity, will reveal love. And that love is that he went to the very end of love. He gave himself totally. So there's a whole mystery in the wound of Jesus revealing who he is. But then there are our wounds, our fragility, our brokenness. And I believe deeply that if God calls us to be competent, whatever field that might be, he's also calling us to recognize our woundedness. Our woundedness is pretty well always on the realm of love, affectivity, relationship, incapacity to forgive, rejecting some people. And what will happen is that the grace of God will flow in us through our woundedness, so that when eventually we have our bodies risen, we will discover and be able to give thanks to God for all that is broken in us. We'll no longer be people criticizing, accusing, but we will have discovered that God has used this woundedness in us to bring us closer to him. But it doesn't end there, because there's also the mystery of each other, that we can help each other, we can be compassionate to each other. I'm just going to ask you one question. Is there somebody that you know to whom you can talk to about your most deepest woundedness, fragility, and pain? Have you been able to meet that person? If you have, you will have discovered that your woundedness has brought you closer to people. And to my experience is that those people who can really listen to you without giving any advice, but revealing to you that you are loved, just as you are. It's okay to have all this fragility in you. It's okay. You don't have to be otherwise. What you will discover as you begin to accept this woundedness is that you're going to want to grow. But you will discover that those who welcome you, they've been in touch with their own brokenness. It's a whole mystery that is there. So then we discover that our woundedness is what will bring us together. It is not our power that brings us together. Our power can, yes, we will be admired. Maybe we'll be on a pedestal, but somewhere it's our humility, our littleness, our woundedness, which brings us together because we discover we need each other. And then we love each other because we need each other. And then we discover that all the compassion which flows from the heart of God into our hearts is a compassion that will bring us all together to be a sign of love in this world.